I started my, if you like, my independent activist career as a whistleblower myself. I was a British ambassador, and in Uzbekistan, I stumbled on the CIA's torture and extraordinary rendition program. I tried to stop that internally. I failed, and so I went public on it, which was the end of my diplomatic career, but start of a new and rather healthier career.
And as someone who paid a price for exposing the truth, can you just share a little bit about that, how you stumbled upon this torture program and what the reaction to your speaking out was?
I learned, first of all, I was in Uzbekistan, which was a really dreadful dictatorship, and which practiced torture on an industrial scale. I mean, tens of thousands of people were tortured, of their own citizens, every year. Anybody who showed any kind of opposition to the dictatorship was liable to end up being tortured. And after they entered this sort of lucrative deal with the Bush administration, by which an American airbase was placed there in Kashi-Khanabad, and there were contracts for gas pipelines and oil pipelines to take their oil and gas over Afghanistan, contracts which incidentally were given to a company called Enron. Then they started to manufacture intelligence material stating that the Uzbek opposition was Al-Qaeda. All of it was right. I was getting CIA intelligence reports all the time talking of Al-Qaeda cells all over Uzbekistan, because that's what justified the American government in giving him massive military aid and subsidies to his terrible dictatorship. But I knew, because I was British ambassador there and it was my job to know what was happening in the country, I knew these reports were simply untrue. And I was very aware of the dreadful torture that was happening to people. And I'm talking to people, genital mutilation, I'm talking of rape, I'm talking of torture of children in front of their parents to get the parents to sign confessions. I'm talking of use of boiling liquid often as a method of torture, including total immersion until death in boiling liquid. So, and then I suddenly put two and two together. I realized that the intelligence we were getting from the CIA was confessions from the torture chambers. And Tashkent it's not that small a city, but has a very small expatriate population. There were about 2 bars you could drink in. And as it happened, I used to drink in the same bar as the CIA people and the people who used to fly in the torture victims under extraordinary rendition, who used to fly them there. And they used to talk, as I was a British ambassador, they assumed I was on the same page as them. So they would talk quite openly to me about prisoners they had brought in and that kind of thing. And I did everything I could to stop it. There's one point I want to make about that, which is that I was seeing this in Uzbekistan, but extraordinary rendition had many destinations. And there'd be many other British ambassadors and more junior British diplomats and civil servants, people working at the Ministry of Defense, people in the military, who would be implicated in the torture and extraordinary rendition program, just as they would be in the United States. And to me, the thing I will never understand until I die is how nobody else blew the whistle. Why was it me? I'm not a particularly moral person. I like a glass of wine, and I was a very ambitious person. I was Britain's youngest ambassador. I'd had a stellar career. If you ask people to describe me, at random, people who knew me, I think ambitious would have cropped up a lot more than moral than people's description of me. But for me, this was a no-brainer. You had innocent people being tortured in order to make them confess to being members of Al-Qaeda, and then they would be shot after the torture. And they weren't members of Al-Qaeda. And the whole purpose was to produce false intelligence in order to justify oil and gas contracts and military contracts. And how anybody in their right mind could live with that, or with any moral sense could go along with it. And yet people I knew in my own service, who were my friends, I'd been in the service for 22 years, were going along with it all around the world. And these CIA people didn't seem like bad people. They had wives and families and they seemed nice. Yet they were doing the most dreadful things. And it's something I've struggled to come to terms with ever since.
Why do you think it is that you, given that you just described yourself as ambitious, that you didn't see yourself as particularly moral, what is the difference between you and others? What accounts for that different response?
I think empathy. I think probably I'm very much driven by empathy and very basic things like kindness and concern on a purely human level. It's not ideological. I would I could. When I learned of instances of people having their children tortured in front of them to make them give calls, it would make me cry, and because purely of empathy, and it's people's ability to make these other people subhuman, to think, oh well, he's an extremist Muslim, therefore he deserved it, which is how most people, I think, manage to compartmentalize it and excuse it, and presumably it's how the Israelis excuse the murder of all those children in Gaza. I don't have that ability. I see humans as humans, but as I say, what I can't understand is that others don't appear to have the same view, and it appears the norm not to have that view. It appears the norm to be able to live with these things and to do these terrible things. And that, in a sense, I'm being banal. It's like the banality of the observation of a banality of evil. It's banal to say it almost, but it's true. It's an absolutely key perception that decent people are prepared to do absolutely terrible things if they've been brainwashed, propagandized into seeing other humans as less than human.